Calvin Kattar and Arnold Allen in the featherweight division, -110, -110 on the betting odds. Tapology's going Allen to win the fight at 62%, giving him around a -150, -140 odds from Tapology. From the public, they are saying Allen should be the favorite. He's undefeated except for one fight early on in his MMA career about 8 years ago against Marcin Warzolkek, however you say that one, where he lost by unanimous decision. Other than that, since then, won 2 more fights and has been undefeated inside of the UFC, submitting Mads Burnell, who's a very good jiu-jitsu guy, getting 4 unanimous decisions in a row, and then finally, out of nowhere, when he had 0 knockout wins in the UFC, finally was able to get a knockout and knock out Dan Hooker in round number 1, just a bit over the halfway mark in that round. But he's not as tall as Calvin Kattar, he's not as lengthy as Calvin Kattar, doesn't have the volume of Calvin Kattar, he doesn't hit as hard as Calvin Kattar. Yeah, he knocked out Dan Hooker, but that was a very deprived Dan Hooker. That was Dan cutting down to the featherweight limit. His chin was shot at that point, cutting down to the featherweight limit. If Calvin Kattar would have fought Dan Hooker at that point, he would have knocked out Dan Hooker as well. So Calvin is going to be the far better striker here. He's going to throw much more volume than Arnold Allen. Yeah, Arnold might have the countering ability in early on around number 1, early on around number 2, could be able to use his speed advantage early on, but in those later rounds, once they're a little bit more sweaty, and once the takedowns become a little bit harder, and once it starts to become a straight up boxing slash kickboxing match, in round 3, in round 4, and in round number 5, that's where Calvin Kattar is really going to start to shine, because he actually showed good rest and good cardio in the Giga Chikadze fight late, which means I don't think Arnold's going to have some success with the wrestling and with the grappling the later on as the fight goes. Calvin has been in 5-round fights. His cardio has held up. His takedowns, his wrestling have held up later on in the fight, which means even if Arnold is able to win these early rounds, round 1, round 2, once they get sweaty, once the speed starts to diminish from Arnold Allen, that's where the volume is going to start to pick up. From Calvin, he's going to start to land much more volume than Arnold Allen. He's going to win round 3, round 4, round 5, and possibly one of the first 2 rounds as well. And I got Calvin Kattar winning a 49-46 unanimous decisions for those reasons. It should be a good one here in the UFC's featherweight division. Betting odds are -110, -110. I disagree with Tapology here. It should be flipped. 62% should go Kattar, 38% should go Allen. I believe Kattar should be around a -140, -150 favorite, kind of around where FanDuel had it a little bit earlier on in the week at -148. But I got Calvin Kattar by a unanimous decision.